Okay, so at the bottom of page 9 you have some space. We're going to go ahead and write this down, this problem down. We're going to recall how to factor when there are 4 terms so that today's lesson will be no big deal. NBD. So what we're going to do first is we're going to look at this problem and see, is there a greatest common factor? That's always our first thing to check. Is there a greatest common factor between all 4 of them?
Yeah.
Between all 4 of them?
No.
No. The first 3 have an N, but that 4 doesn't. Does anybody recall how you can factor 4 terms after you figured out that there's no greatest common factor?
Split them down the middle and factor them separately.
Okay, kind of splitting the middle, we call it grouping, which I think you're thinking the same thing. Okay, so what we're going to do, this is called grouping. We're going to take the first 2 terms, and then we're going to group them together. And the second 2 terms, notice I included the sign with the 12 inside the parentheses. Okay, make sure you include the sign with the 12 inside the parentheses. So now we're going to look at these 2 at a time. So between 21n cubed and 7n squared, what's the greatest common factor between these 2? 7n squared. Thank you, Natalie. 7n squared. So we're going to divide this by 7n squared. We're going to divide this by 7n squared. And if we divide it, where does it go? Out to the front, right? So I have a 7n squared out here. What's left inside? 3n, right? 3n, and then what did you guys say? Plus 1, because 7n squared divided by 7n squared is just 1. Okay? Now, we're going to leave that alone, and we're going to look at the second set of parentheses. What does 12n and 4 have together? 4 or 3? 3 cannot go into 4, so they have a 4 in common. If we divide it, it goes out to the front. So we're doing a second group. So we're going to put the 4 over here. It's a positive 4, so we need to make sure we put plus 4. And then what's left in our parentheses? 12n divided by 4 is what? 3n plus 1. What do you guys notice? You have the same thing in both parentheses. You guys see that? You have a 3n plus 1 and a 3n plus 1. So we're going to take the 3n plus 1 out of the problem. This is our last step. 3n plus 1. That goes. We're going to take it out of the problem because it's a common factor, right? They both have a 3n plus 1. We're going to take it out. And then whatever is left, the 7n squared and this 4, go together in the next parentheses. 7n squared plus 4.
Okay, so now I have 30.
Yep.
Why would... Never mind.
We're going to do another one. Okay. This...
One had to be subtracted.
No, that's only if it's difference of squares. Does 1 have to be subtraction? That's a good thought. Remember when we did difference of squared, 1 had to be a subtraction? Is it the same if you would have written 7n squared plus 4 first, and then written 3n plus 1? Is that the same thing?
No.
Actually, I think so, yes.
What is 2 times 3?
6.
What is 3 times 2? 6. Same answer, right? Multiplication is, does anyone know what that word is? Miss Carolyn, help us out.
Commutative.
Commutative. It just means same forwards and backwards. Okay? You can write 2 and 3 and 3 and 2. It's the same thing. Because this is really a multiplication problem, your parentheses should be touching. You should not have one over here and another one in left field. Your parentheses should be touching. That means multiplication. Taylor?
Now, why aren't we using the subtraction and plus?
Because remember we had to use 1 plus 1 minus because we wanted that middle part to drop out. Remember that? Well, we don't have that up here in the beginning. We have a completely different type of problem up here in the beginning. So we don't necessarily need things to cancel out. Okay? Good question. All right, let's do a second example. Okay, number 2. Go ahead and write this one down. Oh my. Mamma mia.
Looks a lot more threatening than it is.
Exactly. Keep your paper organized. Put number 2 and circle it. This is example number 2.
You all do have a calculator, so.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what's the first thing we always look for?
Greatest common factor.
Thank you. The greatest common factor. What is going to be the greatest common factor here? What might be a good way to start? Aspen, what did you just say? 6. What gave you the clue that we should probably try a 6?
They're all even.
Okay, they're all even, but do you guys see that there's a 6 down here? And that might be the thing that says, hey, that's the most I can pull out of that one. So let's check to see, can I pull a 6 out of everything? Check it out. Can you divide a 6 out of everything? I'm thinking so. We're going to divide the entire problem by 6.
See, I just figured that, 6 goes into 6, 6 goes into 36, and 6 goes into 42, so.
Yeah?
Figured,
Yep. Okay, what is 252 divided by 6? 42. So this stays 42x cubed plus 42 divided by 6? 7x squared
So with these kind of problems, the order does matter, right?
plus 6x. Not technically. You can still do it without doing the order. But it makes life a lot easier if you do it this way. Plus 1. All right. Now we still have 4 terms up here, right? We haven't really grouped them yet, have we?
No.
We didn't group them. So now the first step was to do the GCF. Now this step we're going to group them. Okay, so we're going to kind of forget about this 6 for a minute. We're going to shove it off to the side. We're going to go ahead and group like we did before, the first 2 and then the second 2.
Does it have to always be the first?
Yep, first 2 and second 2. Yep, you'll always group them like that.
GCF.
Yep, now we're looking for the GCF in the first 2. Again, we're forgetting about that 6 for a little bit. Okay? So what does 42x cubed plus 7x squared have in common? What's the greatest common factor? 7x squared. You guys are great. So I'm going to divide this by 7x squared. Divide this by 7x squared. Where does it go if we divide it out?
The front.
To the front.
Oh wait, I gotta make it wrong.
42 divided by 7.
6.
So this becomes 6x, not x squared. We took an x out, right?
Yeah.
And then what is 7x squared divided by 7x squared?
Plus 1.
Plus 1. Okay, we got that group done. Now what about 6x plus 1? What's the greatest common factor between 6x plus 1?
1.
Ooh, you guys didn't even fall for it. Not even for a second.
Miss
Yeah,
Carolyn
it's...
already tried to do the best
Dang
with
it.
the first term.
Carolyn, you ruined it for me. Okay, so when we can't divide anything out, we can always divide out a 1, and you have to divide out a 1, otherwise this process isn't going to work. You're going to be missing a term. So we're going to divide a 1 out. If we divide it out, it goes to the front. It doesn't change anything. We still have 6x plus 1 inside. Do you guys remember the process now?
Yep. So now you take the 7x squared and the 1. And
Put them together, right?
yeah. And then you put the 6x plus 1 and 6x plus 1.
Okay.
Do you need that 6x plus 1 twice for
No.
Because it kind of sounded like you were going to do it twice.
Yeah.
You're combining the 6x plus 1. Is this problem finished?
No, because we still have 6.
Oh, good eyes. We forgot about this 6 that we pulled out from the very beginning, Has to be brought down, just hanging out there out front. This is your final answer. Okay, questions on that, Lexi? Right, you could put 6x plus 1 first and then 7x squared plus 1. It's the same thing. Okay, let's do one last example. If you need to turn your paper sideways and write it up or use another piece of paper, that's fine. There's a little bit of space out there to the words you can write to the side at the end of polynomials. Okay, we're going to do one last example. You're going to do this one on your own. $30x cubed plus 25x squared plus 48x plus 40. If you're watching the video, go ahead and pause. Okay, so what do we factor out of the first two? 5x squared out of both of these, right? If we factor it out, where does it go in the... I was just going to tell you. In the front there. We're left with 6x plus 5. Okay, what are we going to pull out of the second group? Mitchell? 8. Okay. What does that leave us with, Mitchell?
6x plus 5.
Okay. Now we have the same thing in parentheses. Who wants to take me to the next step? Leanna?
Now you want to take your 5x squared plus 8 in parentheses. And then combine your 6x plus 5 and put it.
Perfect. We getting the hang of this? Okay, Ryan?
Question, it doesn't matter if you have them in order or not, does it?
What do you mean in order? Like if you have 6x plus 5 first?
Yeah.
That's fine. Yep, because remember we said 2 times 3 is the same thing as 3 times 2? Yep, it's the same thing. Vinny?
So nothing goes in front of that, like the other problems?
Right, because we pulled out a greatest common factor here. I didn't pull out a GCF on this one.
Okay, so when you don't.
Correct. Okay, so let's turn to page 12 now. We've done a little bit of review. Let's turn to page 12. Okay. Page 12, this is lesson 1.3. Yep, right here, 1.3, factoring trinomials. Lesson 1.3, factoring trinomials. So a trinomial means how many terms? 3 terms, okay? And it looks like this. X squared plus bx plus c. Let's go ahead and put an a here. Okay, A, B, and C all represent numbers. But for the first group that we're going to do, A is just 1. Okay, so if you X factored with Miss Carolyn, it's going to be the same thing here. We're going to see which two numbers multiply to get the C value, but add to get this one. So let's do a times above the C, but a plus above the B, or you can do M for multiply and add for B. Whichever you prefer. You may have been taught factoring a different way before you came to the Excel Center. I will not try to undo that, but if you don't remember it, then go with me today, okay? So we call this X factoring because we're going to start by making an X. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is make an X over here, big enough that you can write inside the X. So our B value is 7, right? That's the one that's in the middle. And our C value is 12. So we want to know what two numbers are going to multiply to get 12, but add to get 7. So they multiply to get 12. So we're going to put the 12 on the top of the X. And I'm going to put an M up here for multiply. Okay? And then I'm going to put a 7 on the bottom of the X. And I'm going to put an A down there, meaning they have to add to get 7. This is where, if you are not strong with multiplication facts, that you might struggle a little bit. Okay, there is no easy way to do this as far as like just What's the right way to do it, Miriam? The way is to know your multiplication facts. If you don't know them, it's okay. You're just going to sit on your calculator and do 12 divided by 1, 12 divided by 2, 12 divided by 3, 12 divided by 4 until you figure it out. Now that's a long process, but in Algebra 2, we don't have time to learn our multiplication facts. Okay, that's why you have a calculator. So if we think, Samantha, what numbers did you say? Multiply to get 12 but add to get 7? Samantha? Oh, sorry. 3 and 4. Ashley is your spokesperson today. 3 and 4. Would you guys agree if you multiply 3 times 4, you should get 12? And if you add 3 plus 4, you should get 7. Cool with that? All right. Here we go. We're going to bring the x squared down. We're going to split this 7 in between the two factors that I chose. So when I say factors, I mean these two numbers right here, the 3 and the 4, okay? So I'm going to make this a positive 3x and a positive 4x. I'm splitting that 7x into a 3x and a 4x. In fact, if you want to write it over here so you remember, that would be fine. And then the last step is to bring down your 12. So you bring down the first one, you split the middle one between the two factors that you choose, and you bring down the last one. What does this look like now? What we just did. So what would you do at this point now?
Now you're gonna group and then
Group and go to town. Okay, so we just spent 20 minutes doing grouping. So I want you to now go ahead and group the first two. Group the second two. I know it doesn't give you very much room. We're not going to go over here. You guys can go over to this side. We're not going to do these over here. So if you need to bleed over into this side of the page, you can. We're not going to do the evens. So you can move over there if you need to. Some more space. You're asking yourself, what do the first two have in common? What do the first two have in common? Did you group them together? Okay, so you're going to divide an x out. What does that leave you with?
For record, Mrs. Miriam, my multiplication table knowledge is my greatest weakness in mathematics. So I'm definitely going to struggle with this portion as I did in Mrs. Carolyn's.
Okay. What does the second group have in common? 2. Not 2. Go higher. 4.
Okay, so 9 times 10 is just gonna be this right here. This, the same thing.
Huh? Are you getting x plus 3 inside both parentheses? You should be getting an x plus 3 in between both parentheses. I'm going to go over here to this side over here. So I'm going to collect what's in the parentheses. And then what was on the outside of the parentheses? X plus 4. If I were to multiply these two back together by foiling it or distributing, you should get this answer here. Okay? Questions on number 1? Okay, let's try number 2. So we're going to do the same thing on number 2. So we've set up our x always. If you want to, so that, pause for just a second. If you want to, so that you have space right here, you can put your x out here to the side. Over here. So that you have more space inside your box if you'd like to. Okay. Again, I know these boxes aren't very big. Okay, so we need to figure out which numbers multiply to get what. What do we have to multiply to get? 18, the last one, right? We have to multiply to get the 18. So I'm going to put an M above it. And I have to add to get the 9. So I'm going to put an A there. So I remember they have to multiply to get 18 and add to get 9. So if I think about the factors that make 18, 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6, that's it. Which group of those add up to be 9? What'd you say? The 3 and 6. So those are the factors that I'm going to choose that go in my X. Let's put a 3x and a 6x. Okay, so that I remember the x goes with them when I break it apart. Okay. Oh, H. Sorry, guys. 3H.
Where did we get an X from?
6H. Sorry. Okay, so remember the first term comes down. The second term gets split between the two factors that you chose. It does not matter whether you write 3H first or 6H first. It does not matter. Okay? So I'm just going to write it as is, plus 3H plus 6H plus 18. Okay, do you know how to do this? There you go. Group and then go to town. Okay, go ahead and pause the video and finish this on your own. Okay, let me show you again. I started with the 3 and the 4 here, and those were the factors that I chose originally, right? Yeah. And then this one had a 3 and a 6, and those are the factors that I chose originally. This is not mere... Hey, both of you, where are you going? So there is actually a shortcut that you can do. Okay, where once you find your factors, you can just set up your x and your x and put your plus 3 and your plus 4. That's why there's such little space here, because they're thinking that you're just going to set it up. However, this process of splitting the middle is going to be mandatory when our A value is not 1. Do you notice on this entire page, look at this entire page, the entire page, what's the coefficient of your squared term? 1, right? It's 1n squared, 1k squared, 1a squared, 1x squared. Anytime that 1 is in front, you can use the shortcut, okay? When 1 is not in front, you have to go the long way. And I'm not just saying that to be mean, I'm saying that you have to do it that way, otherwise it won't come out, okay?
I was about to say that shortcut seems a little too good to be true.
It's not when we're doing these. So let's go ahead and try. Let's jump down to number 7. Okay, so let's jump down to number 7. We're still going to set up our x. You can do it off to the side. What two numbers, what goes on top?
18.
Not just 18. Negative 18. So now when we get close with our negatives, we have to be careful. Negative 18 and 3. Okay, so if I'm thinking about what makes negative 18, 1, negative 18, negative 1, 18. Negative 2, 9, 2, negative 9. 3, 6, negative 6, negative 3, 6. So when you have negatives, you have to be really careful about that. So which of these pairs, when I add them together, don't shout it out, gives me a positive 3? Someone who I have not heard from yet today. Ryan? Ryan says negative 3 and 6. Does anybody have a different answer? What do you think? If you add 3 plus negative 6, what do you get?
3 plus negative 6.
Or negative 6 plus 3, what do you get? You get a negative 3, because the 6 is bigger, right? So we do want this one. Okay, so we're going to use negative 3 and 6. Thank you, Ryan. So we're going to use negative 3 and 6, and now if we wanted to use the shortcut, we can just set up our parentheses, put an n in each of them, and then we have a positive 6 and a negative 3, and it doesn't matter which one goes where. Okay, we have a positive 6 and a negative 3, and that is done. That was a lot less effort. than the other way, right? Now, you can still do the other way. The other way will work if you split the middle. Okay, but this way is a little bit faster. Okay, let's try number 11. Jump down to number 11. Jump down to number 11, please. What two numbers multiply to get negative 45 and adds to get 4? What two numbers multiply? Don't just sit there and wait. You're going to do 45 divided by 1, 45 divided by 2, 45 divided by 3. If you can't do these in your head, it's okay, but you need to get going on your calculator. You can't just sit and wait, because on a test, you can't sit and wait. So we know we have 1 and 45. 2 does not go into negative 45. Does 3 go into 45? Yep, 3 and 15. One of them needs to be negative. If you add 3 and negative 15 together, is that going to give you 4? No. No, okay, so that one doesn't work. What else? Does 5 go into 45? Okay, 5 and negative 4. No, sorry, just kidding. Negative 9. And negative 5 and 9. If you add one of those together, do you get positive 4?
Yes, you get positive.
Ooh.
Oh, you get negative 4.
Okay, you get a negative 4. Listen, shh. You get a negative 4 over here, right? You get a positive 4 with this one. Negative 5 plus 9 is a positive 4. This is where you can get tripped up if you are going too quickly. If you're not sure, use your calculator. Negative 5 plus 9, is that a positive 4 or a negative 4? Okay, so we're going to use negative 5 and positive 9. Remember, we can just take the shortcut. We can set up our parentheses. C and C. One gets the negative 5. One gets the positive 9.
See, my brain wasn't even close to that kind of estimate right there with the...
It's not an estimate. It's actually finding the factors. So you're going to have to spend some time finding the factors, and that's okay. My tests are not timed, and neither is my homework. So you're in good shape.
Do you guys notice when they're different? When they're different, the bigger factor has to match that middle sign. So do you see on number 7? The 6 is positive, and the middle was positive 3. This 4 is positive, and the 9, the factor 9, is a positive 9. Okay, so when you have different signs, because you have a negative C, your larger number needs to match the middle sign, because that's the way it's going to add up to the right sign. Just kind of, that's not coincidence. Again.
Okay, let's try number 15. Now we have 2 negatives to deal with, which is okay. What two numbers multiply to get negative 63 and add to get negative 2? So think about what Miss Carolyn just said. If the middle number was positive, then the bigger of the factors has to be positive. So if this middle term is negative, then the bigger of the factors needs to be what? Negative. Okay? So what makes 63? 1 and 63. Well, that's not going to give me 2. 3 and 21. If I make one of them negative, is that anywhere close to getting 2? Okay. What else makes 63? 9 and 7. So we just talked about if I want to get a negative number here, the bigger number needs to be negative, right? And we can check that math. That negative 9 plus 7 does add to be negative 2. So now we can take the shortcut. We can set up our parentheses. And we get b minus 9, b plus 7. How could you check to make sure your answer is correct? What do you mean plug it in? Okay. Rebecca said go back up. What she means by that is you multiply together, right? And see if you can get back up to the top. All right?
Yeah,
Any
but-
questions on 15?
But basically, you would multiply B times B and then B times
Yep,
9.
you're doing the distributive property, exactly. Okay, let's go to the next page. Let's do a couple what I like to call spicy problems.
Wait, wasn't that Mrs. Carolyn's race?
Maybe.
Who knows, maybe I stole it from the
Woo!
saucy when she
You just called me a saucy wench. I don't think I've ever been called a saucy wench before in my life. I'm going to take that as a compliment, Miss Carolyn. All right, let's look at 31. On 31, what is the A value here? What's your A value?
4.
4. It's not 1. So can we take the shortcut here? No, but what's the first thing we always have to check for? Is there a GCF here?
Yes.
There's a 4. Okay, so let's divide a 4 out of the whole thing.
4 goes out in front.
Yep, 4 goes out in front. We're left with n squared plus 3n plus 2. Now what's your coefficient of your n squared term? What's the number in front of n squared now? There's really a 1 right there now, right? And now it becomes a problem like we've just been doing, okay? So we're going to forget about the 4 for a minute. We want to see what two numbers multiply to get what? 2 and add to get 3. Well, there's only one thing
1 and
that...
2.
Yes, Crystal! Multiplication is not an issue for you. 1 and 2. Okay, so now we can just take the shortcut, right? We can set up our 2 parentheses. N plus 1. N plus 2. But what do we have to remember? Good, put your 4 down at the very front. Okay, let's do one last one. Bless you. Let's do number 33. By yourself. Go ahead and press pause if you're watching the video. What's the greatest common factor on 33? 4? Oh my goodness sakes. We're going to pull a 3 out, right? And that gives me y squared minus 5y plus 4. So what two numbers multiply to get 4, but add to get a negative 5? Interesting. 1 and 4, right? And when I add 1 and 4 together, I get 5. But I hear some of you saying negative 1, negative 4. Ooh. Because when I multiply negative times a negative, I get a positive, right? So I need that positive 4. When I add negative 1 and negative 4, I get a negative 5. So we got to be tricky about these. Okay? So I can go ahead and set up my parentheses, y minus 1, y minus 4, and then I have a 3 on the outside. How are you guys feeling about this? You're okay? Someone said nauseous. That's always a good sign. Okay, here's your assignment. Okay, are you listening? 8 through 26 even. So back on the other page, 8 through 26 even. On page 12. Well, I didn't say scribble them out. I said you can bleed over into the other side, were my words. 8 through 26 even on page 12. And then on page 13, you need to do 32, 34, 36. Okay. Stop talking and listen. On page 12, 8 through 26 even. So page 12 and 13 then. 8 through 26 even. And then you need to do 32, 34, and 36. Okay? When we get back from break, I'm going to give you about 15 minutes to work. and then we're going to move on. So if you want to use some of your break time to work on this, it's totally fine with me. Okay, go take a small break and then come back in. Be back at 2:10 today.
I don't think I